Hello and welcome back to St Michael's Hill. Thank you for joining me today. Today's video I'm going to be looking at another Railway Laser Lines kit. This time it's going to be the fuel store / maintenance office that is based on the one at Toton. It's obviously in 00, as that's the gauge that I model. If you don't know of Railway Laser Lines, they are the people that designed the shed that I've put together for the new layout. So there's also going to be other buildings on the layout that come from them. I really like the kits that Steve produces, and hopefully this video will kind of show you why. So I've got all the parts basically kind of laid out on the table here. We've got internal walling, external brickwork. These sections are the base and the roof. Base is the one at the top there, and the roof are these two sections. Then there's windows, doors, glazing, frames and sills and everything like that. And then there's internal wall pieces. So the way that generally these kits work from Steve is that there is an internal plain kind of wall, and then you basically clad that with internal and external bricks. Gives you a kind of nice strong structure. The other thing about this kit is that very recently kind of new pictures of the actual building that this was based on came to light, and Steve's actually produced some additional roofing parts which I will end up fitting. So it's just a different style of roof, so that's going to be included on the new or on the build that I'm doing. Also, as you can see there's a small piece of brass piping that makes the guttering or a downpipe from the roof. So with the Railway Laser Lines kits, you get instructions that are online. So I'm going to log on there and see what the first kind of instructions are. I'm going to take you through each step of the build, and hopefully by the end of this video we'll have a complete kit. So as you can see, the instructions that you get online are very in depth. And it's just a case of following them through. They're very well written generally. So I'll see how I get on with this. The first thing that is suggested is that we run through a dry fit. So I'm just going to put together as much of it as I possibly can before we start kind of gluing everything together. It's a really good idea to do this, as it will give you a lot better idea of how everything's going to go together. So I'll do that, and then once it's all together, I will show you where we're at. So as you can see, I've put together the kit in a bit of a dry fit. I haven't put any of the doors or anything like that on yet. It's just the external brickwork and the internal layers, but it all goes together very nicely and is pretty structurally sound as it is, which is quite impressive really. It goes together basically like a 3D jigsaw. So this is basically what it's going to kind of look like when it's done. It just gives me a good idea of what it should look like as I go through the instructions, just to make sure that I don't make any mistakes. The first instruction is to glue the internal walls to the base, and then place the roof on top, but not to glue that in place. So that's what I'll do first. So I'll remove the basically all the cladding and start by getting those pieces glued into place. To glue this in place, I'm just going to use some PVA glue, and once that's done I will paint the flooring and the step out the front in a concrete colour. So I'll get back to you once the walls are glued in and the base is all painted. Just a little while later now, and the paint on the floor has all been dried and the glue that's holding it all together is dried. Very simple structure to go together, and just a case of making sure that you go careful with the amount of glue using a damp cloth to wipe up any excess that kind of comes out, but gives us a nice base. I will add some kind of weathering and additional kind of colours to the grey, but as a good starting point, that is that. The next stage is to paint the lintels and window ledges. So I'm going to do that in a similar colour. They're going to kind of look like a concretey type colour. And from there, we will get the window construction underway. As per the next instruction, I've now primed the inner brickwork and also the lintels and window ledges. Simply just kind of used some masking tape to make a double-sided roll, just to kind of get all angles except the underneath, which won't be shown. So As you can see, that's not been primed, the rest of it has. With the windows, it's just quite, just says to make extra care to make sure you get the inside of the frames, otherwise you get the kind of brown of the card colour. So that's all ready to go, and I'll be moving on to the next instruction. The next job has now been completed, which was to paint the window frames. These have been done both sides. Now they just need to be removed from the sprue and kept to one side for adding the glazing at a later point in the build. So I'm going to do that. After that, the job is going to be to paint the interior doors. In terms of colour, I'm thinking probably some sort of dark blue on the outside. The depot probably would have been a trans rail depot after privatisation, just because of the area of the layout. So their kind of colour, or house colour, was a dark blue. So I'll probably give the doors a bit of a dark blue, and I'll probably do the internal doors the same colour. So the next job, as I've said, is to put the windows and the glazing together. It's quite a simple job. These just snap out of the sprue, and then we can place the window behind it, a little bit of glue and glaze or something similar, and that will be ready. We'll also do the ones for the doors at the same time. They go on the inside of the internal framework, so just in there, and that will get covered up by the internal doors, which you can see over there in blue at a later stage, so they won't be seen from the outside. So that's the next job, and once that's done, I'll be back. So I've now fitted the windows, and I'm fitting the internal brickwork. I'm just using PVA glue and then holding it together with clamps. The front's already been done. Just now doing the back, and then it'll be the sides, and the central walls are going to kind of get that brick treatment. Once that's done, I'll be fitting the internal doors, and then probably the frames for those, and going from there. So I've moved the build on a little bit. I've added the small door frames, or small window frames in the door. Equally on the inside, I've added the doors, again added the frame around the window, and then there's an additional door frame that goes around the door to kind of finish it off nicely. As you can see, all the interiors are now in. The next step is to add the brick exterior. I've given this a priming in Halford's red primer. Same priming colour that I used for the depot. As you can see, the colour is actually quite different, and that's basically because of weathering. So I'm going to weather these pieces. I'm going to use some kind of lighter washes and darker washes to kind of get a kind of well-worn look. I'm going to be adding kind of a little bit dark around the bottom, and then maybe a few kind of streaks of kind of white and black as the kind of model or the prototype certainly shows the kind of staining of limescale and things like that, where water's been running across the building. So I'm going to do that, and then they're going to be placed around the frame, and once that's done, I'll be able to kind of fit the exterior door frames, and from that point it will be onto the lintels and the windowsills. So I've now given the walls a slight kind of weathering, a slight darkening along the bottom and under the windowsills, where they're going to be a little bit of kind of streaking, but very, very light. And now this will be added to once the building is all in place, just because I want to make sure that the weathering kind of goes onto the doorsteps and the window frames and things like that as well. Like I said, the end result will hopefully be something very similar to this sort of thing. As you can see, it's a lot cleaner at the moment, but generally it's gone on okay. The roof is still not fully fitted. That's probably the next step, to be honest, although I do need to fit the lintels and the window frames and the door lintels as well. So that'll be the next thing that I do. Very simple case of just gluing them in place with a little bit of speed bond or something. Very small little parts, but really do make the effect. And then it'll be looking at the roof. So the lintels are now in place. Kind of a fairly simple job, really, just with some PVA or speed bond as I've used, just to kind of get it in place and hold it there. So yeah, very, very pleased with how they've gone in. Fairly easy, like I said. So yeah. Next is going to be the roof. So originally when this kit was launched, the roof that came with it was a simple one that went across the top here. Lift up the camera a little bit. It's a simple roof that kind of is indented from the side there, with the hole there for the piece of guttering. In the recent weeks, Steve at Railways Lines has come up with a new roof. So it involves using a thin piece of kind of card that goes in place like that, lining up. And there's a small section you can just see there that's got kind of a hole taken out of the side of it. So you put that in place, and then take this section here, and it's raised and goes on like that, very roughly. So once that's all in place, then it's good to kind of go. Just trying to work out whether the roof can be kept as something that can be fully removed, and I think it can. I don't think there's any need to glue it in place fully, so I'm going to try and build that separately and get it painted so I can then add it on afterwards. It just means then I'll be able to add interior bits later. If I can't do that, I will look to add lighting and an interior before I add that, but I'll have a look and I'll get back to you. So I've worked out I can definitely glue everything in place and then place it on top of the building, so that's what's happened now. I'm just using these clamps to hold the paper nice and flat so it doesn't bow up with the glue that's been added to it. So I'm going to let that fully dry, and then I'm going to paint it. I'm going to use, as suggested by Steve in the instructions, some sand to kind of give the kind of slightly textured look that you sometimes get on these kind of felt roofs. Probably got one on your shed or something like that. I think sand should be small enough to give me a nice texture, so I'll get a coat of black on there, add some sand across it, and then paint again in black just to kind of get it looking nice. The outside is probably going to be a slightly different colour, but I'll use that and mask it off. You probably could have painted it beforehand. Certainly wouldn't have hurt, but I think what I'm going for probably doesn't matter either way. And then I'm going to start to look at the detailing after I've given the brickwork and the roof a bit of a weathering. So the next stage is to kind of probably weather up the building a little bit more, and once that is done, hopefully the glue will be dry and we can start to look at the roof. So I've added a few washes now, and it's just kind of toned everything down a bit. Added a whitewash to the doors just to make them look a little bit faded. Just some kind of areas of kind of lighter and darker colours just in patches across it. I've looked at a few photos of not just the prototype but kind of buildings similar, and just kind of tried to pick up a little bit of the detailing and things like that from it. So I'm fairly happy with that. I've just given the roof a primer of grey. Looking at the pictures, it's kind of more of a grey than a black, so I'm kind of start with grey. I'll probably weather it quite heavily so it kind of goes very dark grey or almost black, but certainly going to start with grey rather than black. So once that's done, I will show you how that's gone on. In the meantime, I'm going to start working on a few bits for the interior. Be good to get a couple of desks or something like that just inside, maybe a few things on the walls, just so the workers can kind of be seen from kind of the inside. The other thing I will do is get a light, certainly in the office section here. I think this would be more of a storeroom. I'm going to leave that without a light, but I will look to add a light into the main office section, and that will be probably a case of drilling a hole into the floor and having that kind of powered from below. So that's something that I'll be looking to do as well. So I've now primed the roof. As you can see, it's in the grey. I've then added a bit of glue, a light layer of glue to the top there, and filled it with some sand. There's obviously quite a lot in there at the moment. A lot of that will just be wiped off as excess. And then once that's done, I'll hit it with another layer of paint just to kind of get that painted and all sealed in. So hopefully at that point we'll get a nice looking texture on the roof, and then I'll be able to weather it. Like I said, the raised bar is probably going to be left very much that grey colour. From the pictures I've seen, it's quite a lot lighter than the actual bottom of the roof, so around the edges and where the sand is will be given some kind of heavier weathering to kind of bring out a darker look. Once that's done, I'll be ready to kind of finish the building other than the interior. I've started to put together some scale model scenery, little kind of bits and pieces to go inside, so there'll be a desk and some shelving and a chair and all that sort of stuff. And then finally it'll be lighting. Before I start to look at the outside, there's a few other bits I want to add to the outside of the building, just to kind of give it its final detailing and make it look done. So I'll be working on that and I'll get back to you in a second. So getting closer to completion now. I've added the pipework that's on the prototype. Needs a little touching up where I've held it on with a clamp. It's the primer's just come off the metal, but I'll just touch that up with a brush very carefully. Inside I've added a desk and a chair from Scale Model Scenery. Also one of their kind of rack units that's covering or partly covering the wire that will be the lighting. So once that's kind of all dry, I'll paint the wire black just to kind of hide it a little bit more. And then I'll add a few boxes, cardboard boxes from the Scale Model Scenery set onto the shelf, and then I think that'll be pretty much it. I might add a little bit more additional wiring kind of on the front of the building. That's kind of there in the prototype and I really like that, so that's probably something that I will do, but it's pretty much there. So I've now added the light to the building. As you can see in the dark, it's fairly bright, although from a distance I think it's probably about right. I might add a little bit more of a resistor to it. The one in the pack's kind of given me this, which I think's it's not far off, but maybe a little bit less light would be kind of good. There's a teeny tiny bit of light bleed at the top there as well, so I might try and get that sorted at some point as well. But generally very happy with it. You can see inside the filling it with an interior is really kind of made it been worthwhile, as you can see it all, so that's really good. And yeah, very happy. I'll turn the lights back on now and you'll be able to see the little diorama that I've kind of placed it on for now. Obviously it's going to be going onto the layout, so this is only very temporary, it's not stuck down at all, but it should give you an idea of what I'm looking to do on the layout as well. So here we go, pretty much the finished article. Added a couple of pallets as kind of a bit of junk that's around the actual prototype. There's a picture of the roof that's just covered in kind of bits of old chair and other things, so that's probably where either kids or workers have thrown things up on the top of the roof. As you can see, I've added the black wire as well, so again on the prototype there was wiring that kind of came down from the top and went through the window. I've used just a single strand of cotton for this. Basically kind of ran it through some glue, basically kind of saturated the cotton a little bit with it, and then it basically stuck to the wall, which I'm very happy with. You can see as well the grey wiring that's been added. That's just going along here at the moment. I will add, basically it would be going to another building or something on the layout, so that'll be good. And I've just popped a Scale Model Scenery piece of fencing in front, again much like the prototype, just to kind of, I guess, protect workers from anything as they come out of the doors. So I'm going to leave it here for today. I'm pretty sure at the time of recording this, which is midweek, so March 17th I think it is today, Steve has got 4 of these kits that have been cut ready to be sent out. Obviously with the coronavirus situation that's going on, I'm not sure, and I guess he's not sure on a day-to-day basis how available he'll be to be able to print more. So if you do want one, check out his website. I will leave a link in the description below, and do check them out. I'm not affiliated in any way, there's no kickback for you buying from him. I'm literally doing this because I really like what Steve does with his products and I've really enjoyed making it. So check it out and yeah, pick one up if you've got some sort of depot and want to kind of have a building a bit like this. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon on St Michael's Hill. Goodbye.